Successful. In terms of numbers of visitors, it was outstanding. We had more than I had from my previous exhibition in Hull last year. In terms of sales, it was really surprising. I sold more posters, sold more prints than I did last year.
And you're making the prints yourselves, right?
Yeah. These were lino prints mainly, or screen prints. The thing I liked most was talking with people in the gallery and the responses, because the exhibition told a story, and it told a story of people coming together in really difficult circumstances and trying to defend their culture, try to defend their land against people who would take it away from them. So the two writers who really inspired me were Mary McCarthy, who was an American writer who was against the American war in Vietnam, and she wrote for the New York Review of Books several articles, well quite a few actually, and they were turned into a book called The 17th Degree. Now she was there to find out what was going on, and she went to Saigon in the south, and then she went to North Vietnam, which the Americans were bombing at the time. So she was very brave, and she found out what the Americans were really doing, which was a kill anything that moves policy, bomb anything that moves policy, and she tried to engage with the American public back home and tell them that story.
So was that through her writing?
Yeah.
Or was she also taking photos at the time?
Well, no, she wasn't the photographer.
Okay.
She took a few,
or did she like partner up with somebody else?
Yeah. So she was with some photojournalists, and one of the other books which was inspirational was a book called Another Vietnam, which was a book of photos taken by Vietnamese photographers, which you never see before. So these images were surprising to me and inspiring, because they showed what was going on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They showed young people doing volunteer work in reconstruction and in terms of air raid warnings. They showed communities trying to defend their country and to defend their land. There was a kind of connection with the jungle, with the environment, which came through what McCarthy saw, but also it came through the photos. So that was one of the elements.
So would you say they complemented each other quite well?
Yeah. So it helped me as a visual artist to pick up on that from McCarthy, but also to notice that and select that from the photos that I used as the basis for my prints.
So what sparked you to pick the photos that you did?
Well,
would you have like when you read the book, or was it the imagery itself?
So what I did was there were elements in McCarthy's writing which connected with some of the photos. For instance, the fact that it was very noticeable that women were coming into the struggle, and she wrote about that. So I selected images where women were at the forefront of the struggle in North Vietnam. So you have people not necessarily in combat, but in terms of camouflaging bridges, in terms of air raid volunteering to spot the bombs that were coming down.
So would you almost say it has parallels to the Second World War? And obviously when the guys went to war, and then they were making the bomb casings and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
and they're completely different.
It was very much like that. And there's one image that was my favourite, was of women fishing in the Mekong Delta, which was traditionally a man's job before the war, but because the menfolk were in the army. Women helped in that struggle to feed families, to feed communities.
So is this almost a celebration of the women movement at that time?
Well, yeah. I mean, in wartime, women have always been asked to fill in for men, and so this happened, as you said, in the Second World War, but it also happened in the American War in Vietnam, and probably around the world again. But I just mentioned the other writers, Arundhati Roy, she's most famous for winning the the Booker Prize for Literature with The God of Small Things. But she wrote a book called Walking with the Comrades about the struggle in central India by the native tribal communities there, who were being forced off the land by basically global capitalism, who want to strip mine their homeland because it contains iron ore and
all the raw materials.
And bauxite is the main one.
Yeah.
So there's been a struggle going on there since about 1948 on various levels. But Arundhati Roy, went to meet the people who have been described as India's biggest internal security threat. And what she found out was, again, a community of people trying to defend themselves against dispossession. And at the forefront of that were women. So that was a connection for me.
Okay. So I know you've done stuff like Rock Against Racism.
Yeah.
Would you say you're almost a little bit of I won't say a political activist, but
Well,
an
I am.
activist you're a political activist. And would you say through that comes through within your artwork?
Yeah.
Within you do writings as well, though.
Yeah. I mean, as a political activist and artist, to find a way to do art which isn't about campaigning has been something I've been interested in pursuing. And I found through McCarthy and through Roy a way of telling stories which aren't just about campaign events, but are about the history of people in struggle, and that's the way I'm going.
So how does it work for you then? Are you an artist first, or are you a political activist first, or are you kind of an amalgamation of both?
It's a very interesting question. I think art drew me into politics. The art that I liked when I was a lot younger than I am now had a message, had a strong message, and it had a message about human rights, and it had a message about equality. And one of my first inspiration was a German photo montage artist called John Hartfield. His German name was, escaped me a name, but he's better known as John Hartfield. But he basically invented photo montage. I remember doing that when I was a student and stealing some of his ideas then.
Right.
And I'm a massive stealer.
Borrowing. Borrowing.
Yeah. Well,
because there's no such thing as original ideas.
Yeah. Picasso didn't copy; he stole. He was happy to say he stole. So I'm not saying I'm a Picasso, obviously, but like in any creative process, you build on what's before and you adapt it and change it. Like the photographers celebrated in our Hip Fest this month.
Okay, so you were doing prints, right?
Yeah.
Now you went to lino print.
Yeah.
How did you get to doing lino print? Because from what I recall, you're not a lino.
Well, no, I was silk screen,
Yeah.
but I belonged to something called Hull Print Collective, and we're more formalised as a group now. But basically, it's an evening class. So the evening class at Hull College, you can do silk screen, you can do relief printing, which is usually lino, but it could be wood cut. You can do intaglio printing, which is dry point, which I'm just learning to do. And I'm hoping to introduce that into my next project about the kite flying. So again, that's a challenge. I want to develop my own skills, but I'm finding lino. Everybody's done lino at school. Everybody's cut themselves on a lino. Yeah, I'm sure you have.
Somebody's like nearly took the thumb off, like myself.
And it was really interesting talking to people during the exhibition who had tried it. But the more, I've only been doing it about 18 months, but I've learned so much from my group, and also from from doing it. It is time consuming. It's a good job I'm retired. I've got the time to do it.
It was amazing.
Thank you.
I wouldn't have guessed that you've only just been doing it for what, the past year?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the early ones were a bit basic and I didn't understand the medium. But with the people I work with at Hull College, the Print Collective, they're so knowledgeable. And like most other art, I mean, I'm not a trained artist. I got CSE art grade 3, so that's just a fact. My new project is about, it's a more narrative project, but it's about a Palestinian boy who wants to fly a kite. And again, it's based on a photographic exhibition we had in the Hip Gallery last year by Rich Wiles, who works for the Palestinian Refugee Centre, the Lasji Centre, and it's loosely based on a photo book that he did. But I'm drawing on lots of different influences, but it will be about trying to say the Palestinian cause is one worth fighting for.
So how do you pick it? Because there's so much going on now.
Yeah.
How do you decide on what you want to actually work?
Well, I mean, one of the things was that, it's personal intersections of things that happen and experience. I mean, one of the inspirations was Rich Wiles' exhibitions about what was going on in Palestine, Israel, and the Gaza Strip last year. And then what I wanted to do was something a bit different and challenging from lino cut. So I've been developing a few, somewhat an interest in other printmaking techniques. One's called dry point.
Okay.
And I want to use that in making portraits of people linked into the story of the kite flying in Gaza.
Right, well, it's been a pleasure. I'm sure we'll catch up again.
I'm sure we will, Kat.
And thank you very much for your time.
You're very, very welcome.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.